welcome. Thank you for attending this event this evening. I'm Ajay Patel, CEO of SMA. Over to the end of this group here is Jacque Keats, our Chief Operating Officer. All right, so the theme for this evening is competitiveness, corporate competitiveness. Competitiveness is one of those words which is not well defined, and we're going to get to that. I think that might be Jacque's actually first question of the panelists.
Indeed.
And it's not just in the context of winning new business, it's also in the context of execution on programs, all the way through what we call the program lifecycle. So I'm going to first introduce each of our panelists, and then I'm going to just give a short set of remarks to kind of get us going and thinking, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jacque, who's going to be our moderator. On my right is Barry Draskovich. He is the Group Vice President of Program and Contract Management at Parker Aerospace. He's the program executive, two massive programs at Parker, and much more than that, but the Boeing 787, the Gulfstream, G500 and G600 series, right?
700.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To Barry's right is Pamela Arya. Pamela is the Vice President of Government Programs at Iridium. Now, prior to this role, she was the co-founder and chief executive officer of Optensity. Did I pronounce that correctly? Mm-hmm. Great. That's a cloud-based analytics company. And also, she was one of the creators of this App Symphony, which was a platform for building analytics and really kind of is data mining, right? Yeah. And perhaps if you could talk a little bit about your background as that becomes relevant to some of the questions, that'd be great. Thank you for joining us, Pam. And to Pam's right is David Whelan. Now, David is a member of the Air Force Science Advisory Board, as well as NAE, the National Academy of Engineering, which is a very prestigious, very, very difficult thing to become a member of. Before that, David was the vice president. He was the chief technologist at Boeing. What did they call them at that time? It was
BDS.
BDS, yeah, Boeing Defense Space Security.
Yeah, we forgot one of the S's, but BDS.
BDS, okay. And so before we get started, just a couple of comments. Most importantly,
Indeed.
we have this little book which will fit in your pocket. It's called the SMA Competitive Index for Federal Contractors. This is the first bulletin, the first issue of this book. And what we've done is something really unusual. We've digested 13 billion
An ocean.
an ocean of data.
That's right.
And actually start to develop a benchmark of federal contractors, right? And some really interesting results. Now, we're going to publish this every quarter, and the next one's going to have a lot more analysis in there around specific markets as well as trends. But this is our first book. We hope you, when you leave, please grab a copy and let us know if you want to be on the receiving list of this book every quarter, please. Okay. So obviously, this book is all about this evening.
That's right.
All right. So I'm just going to make some remarks. Now, this is from an SMA perspective. Our business, a little bit of an unusual business, but for 40 years, we've helped companies win new business, and we've helped them execute on that business as well. So we have this unusual view about competitiveness, and what we've been seeing in the last 5 to 10 years is actually quite remarkable, I think. If you think about how most companies think about their competitiveness, this goes all the way back to the 80s and certainly through the last several decades. We think of it as kind of two things. One is how companies create what they call sustainable competitive advantages and how they create barriers to entry, right? And at least for federal contractors, that comes down to two things. It has for decades. It comes down to what we call extractive sources of advantage and protective sources of advantage. Fancy words. Extractive means you're just more clever than everybody else of how to get more profit from your customers and more profit from your suppliers, okay? And that certainly has been happening for decades, right? Boeing's really good at that at one point in time. Really good, yeah. And protective sources of advantage are basically how do you lock in your customers for life and how do you lock in your suppliers for life, right? So really creating barriers to entry.
And Boeing is better at that.
Yes, that's right. Particularly around technology, you've all heard the term closed systems versus open systems. Closed systems is a great way for companies to really kind of just lock in that technology solution into a customer for decades. All right, now we've been seeing something actually quite remarkable in the last several years, probably 5 years on. So what those two techniques has resulted in is when a customer gets let's say 3 proposals from 3 companies oftentimes they look very similar. They're like this, this, and this, and the customer has to make a hard decision between this, this, and this. Oftentimes it's over just a handful of dollars, or a handful of millions of dollars, or tens of millions of dollars, depending on what it is, right? What we've been seeing is, in the last 5 years, a widening of that gap. So winners over here, all the losers over here. Okay? And we've been seeing this consistently in the last 5 years. Now, how is that being accomplished, and is that trend going to accelerate? We actually think that that trend is going to accelerate. And the companies that are winning over here really create a differentiated offer compared to everybody else. And what they're doing is they have this intense focus on the customer, really intense focus on customer, more so than what we conventionally think about in terms of customer intimacy, particularly with the federal government, well beyond what you might think in terms of what you infer in terms of the details of an RFP, for example, right? Or all of the capture activities. This allows companies to really uniquely allocate their resources to those most important customer needs, which may not be well articulated in your discussions with customers or in the RFP. The second thing that we see a little bit less often, but we're certainly seeing it with one of our clients, right? Our new clients, which we're very pleased to have, is that the company's mission, vision, purpose is being reflected in their proposals and their offers to the customers. And when those align with what the customer is looking for, it's a slam dunk, right? And there's a handful of companies that are emerging, and they're going to become big companies. They're going to compete against the Boeings, Lockheeds, Raytheons of the world. And I would watch out for them if I was with one of them, that because of this intense focus on what the customer's needs really are and their ability to actually translate who they are as a company to and align it to the customer's needs, they're gonna have a superior advantage. Certainly over those companies that are still using the old methods of competitive advantage. All right. Now with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jacque, the moderator.
All right. So when we think about competitiveness, and Ajay was talking about this earlier, is that a lot of times we think about it, as a proposal, and that's when we compete and we win and we go off and we deliver work. But as Ajay said, the competitive perspective spans the entire program lifecycle. So first question, in your role, how do you define competitiveness? So we'll start with Barry.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Jacque. By the way, that's the sound of money right there.
That's right.
I think that was a Boeing 737.
And you can probably find a Parker part on just about every plane and vehicle in here, except for maybe the German stuff. Too old for us. But anyway, hey, I did a little research on this, and you can trace competitiveness or competition back actually to Latin, but I went back to the 14th century France and found this word competire. And I'm probably not saying that right in French because I'm not a very good French speaker. But it means to be in rivalry with. It doesn't say who or what, but it just says to be in rivalry with. And that's sort of the whole basis of what competition and competitiveness is all about. And from my perspective, how I look at it, it's being at least as equal or better than other people within your space, whatever that space might be. So, we look at it in our industry of, winning that business. How can we win that business against other companies that are also bidding on it? And we have to figure out a way, as Ajay had mentioned, to discriminate ourselves against. And I think we're going to get into a lot of what that really means in the later section. So,
Pam?
Pam.
Well, for me personally, and I, when my customer picks my solution or Iridium solution over anyone else who might be in the space or is competing directly with us, that's what I consider competitiveness. Like when our offering, either mainly through differentiation, that's our specialty, is picked over other commercial SATCOM companies, I feel like that's what competitiveness is. So your customer wants you more than they want someone else.
David?
I'm a physicist by training, and so I'm addicted to technology, right? I like inventing. I like finding a new way to do things. And I remember sometimes at Boeing, the general managers of existing programs would always cringe that I would be proposing something new that is not on the path that they're normally on. So there's a little bit of a reaction to that. But I've always felt that the best innovator, the best idea is the best way to win a competition. And so at Boeing, I used to try to drive the investments early on in the R&D stage and through the demonstration and prototyping that would lead to a new capability to satisfy some mission requirement in a new way with performance that was beyond what you would traditionally see. So I've always felt that that's the right way to come about things. And I think the department in general has been moving more and more to find new sources of innovation, and whether it's through organizational structures like DIU and DARPA and Strategic Capability Office, all those are attempts by the government to try to drive new levels of competition and trying to revitalize industries, resourcefulness for embracing competition. So that's my thoughts.
So, Ajay?
Well, it's not about revenue, it's not about backlog. Every year, Defense News, Space News, Washington, all those magazines come out with some ranking, right? Companies that it's mostly just based on backlog or revenues, and it certainly isn't that. Because backlog and revenues are about many other things. So, Barry, you said it spot on, it's about winning new business. And we think of it as essentially not just the next piece of new business, but also about what is the real depth of your capability, of your reservoir, right, to compete, and how consistent are you in competing. And that's kind of what we build into this index. We've also kind of give you a very simple example. Every competition is different. And they're different in terms of complexity, different in terms of intensity. Let's just take intensity as an example, right? And so I think a lot of people forget about this, but let's say there's a $100 million contract you're going after, and there's 2 bidders. So companies usually don't think this way, but the truth is, if you're going to bid on something that's big, you're going to make a big investment, you're pretty much offerable. In other words, you have the capability to win. It's what you do once you decide to pursue it, in terms of the things that you do that improve your offer, differentiate it, and that you're doing specific for the customer that actually gives you that advantage to win. But if there's 2 competitors for a $100 million contract, your expected value, equal stakes, is $50 million. So if you win, what you've gained is $100 million minus $50 million competitive gain. If you have another $100 million opportunity where there's 3 bidders, what's the expected value? $33 million, right? So what's your competitive gain? It's $67 million. Right? So we don't think of the total contract value as what you've really won, but it's that difference between equal stakes. If you're in the poker game, it's your table stakes, right? And what the actual contract value is. So obviously a competition with 3 bidders is much more intense than a competition with 2 bidders. It's actually a geometric factor in terms of intensity and complexity. We consider that. We also consider the actual individual complexity of each competition when we created this index. So we think of it in a way that's kind of quantitative, and it's just not the total dollars won, but it's actually the difference between what your expected value is, given equal odds of winning, and the actual what you've won.
Thank you. All right, so the next question is, in your experience, where have you seen the most impactful source of competitive advantage? Pam, I'll ask you to start.
Well, most recently for me, it was having direct, and I think this is new in the defense businesses, having direct commercial experience that translated one-to-one to what the customer wanted. And I think that gave us a huge advantage over the 7 competitors we went up against, because none of them could say, like, oh, we've done this commercially for 30 years, so we know how to do this. There wasn't really any other competitor that could say that. So I think that was the hugest advantage to us. And in terms of writing the proposal, the feedback was that the customer said it was like eating chocolate cake. which I've never been complimented like that I've written a proposal that was like chocolate cake. So I've always kind of wondered, like, what else did they read that they used that term? It was a little surprising.
Did you get to record that or get it in writing? That's a great compliment. David.
So I still think innovation is probably the greatest differentiator among a lot of our competitors. If I look at some recent competitive wins between Boeing and Northrop, Boeing lost quite a few recently, and the difference was, I think, the experience and the ability to scale a technology based on prior experience in a way that was more innovative and affordable for the customer. And so how do you capture that kind of ability to show that your technology can scale to fit the customer's needs? And I think if you look at the engagements we're dealing with Ukraine now, it's all about, can I scale the development or the delivery of capability, and whether it's UAVs for ISR or weapons, you're seeing a lot of drive to deliver in a much more producible way and leveraging commercial where you can to accelerate those deliveries. So,
Barry?
I'm going to be a little contrarian here, and I'm going to say that it has to do with customer relationships and the ability to establish trust between the supplier and the customer. And from my perspective, if you can do that, there is a level of weighting that goes to that I think can even overcome technological advantage. There's been studies out there. As a matter of fact, I was at a conference just about a month ago, and one of the speakers was talking about the trust in the ability to win new programs. And they had done a study that said, if you've got two equal partners, if you've got two equal suppliers, and in every way they're equal, except one has a long-term relationship with the customer and one doesn't, how much difference in price would there need to be for that customer to flip over to the non-trusted supplier? And the number came out to like 37%.
Wow.
Which is pretty significant. So that level of trust that you build with those relationships has a monetary value that I don't think people take into account. Right? And I do think in a lot of instances it does trump technical innovation.
Can you share that study with us?
I'll see if I can dig it up.
That'd be fantastic. AJ?
2 words: hire SMA. I don't think it's one simple, single answer. Even hiring SMA is not necessarily the simple, single answer. But there's this thing which we used to be very steeped in. It's actually still a great tool and technique, the way I think it's about. It's something that came out of the Doblin Group. It's called 10 Types of Innovation. You can actually get rid of the word innovation. It's just kind of, you think about how you construct your offer to a customer. It's not just about the product or the service itself and the technical aspects of that product or service. It's also about how you've engaged with the customer, right? Have you done that in any new or novel way? It's also about how you've run your business, and are you doing that in any new or novel way? And if you do that, I think it was, Bernie, please correct, I think 3 times, or Alan, if you at least pick 3 different ways, right? And made that as a unique combination of ways in which you've constructed an offer, it really locks you in. It's hard for other people to duplicate that. So I think it's where you have to think across the entire span of how your offer is constructed and how the customer's going to engage with you, if you've won.
wasn't that book called The 10 Faces of Innovation?
10 types of innovation, yes.
All right, so that was a good segue into the next question, which is, what role does innovation play in enhancing competitiveness and why?
I'm not convinced that the best idea wins all the time. I certainly think that...
It's the same way for lowest price doesn't always win, right?
That's right.
Same way with most mature design doesn't always win. So
That's right. Yeah. But I think, first of all, it plays an important role. I think irregardless of not necessarily being the most innovative, but it's being innovative in the right way, right? So I think you have to combine in what you believe the customer's real need is, and it's not always articulated well, by the way, right? And your capture BD people come back from meeting the customers, they don't necessarily have it 100% either, right? So I think if the innovation is focused around those things that really align to what the customer's need is, what the customer's mission is, right? And helping them achieve the mission. The way we think about it is innovations, as we said, the 10 types, it spans across many different things, not just the product itself. But in anything that a customer's buying from you, you have to ask yourself the question, what makes it hard for them to not do it themselves? I think that's usually the first question you should ask yourself, right? And if you don't have an answer to that problem yourself, then you really don't understand, right, how to produce a good product or a good offering for the customer. So you really have to understand what makes it hard. Why is the customer buying it from somebody else, right? And what's the motivation behind that? Why is it they couldn't do it themselves, as an example? In our consulting business, we always ask ourselves, why can't our customer, it's Boeing, right, or Parker, or somebody else, or Iridium, why can't they do this themselves, right? What's making it difficult for them to do this? And if we can understand that, then we can actually deliver good value.
All right. Barry?
Yeah, I think it's very important, but as as Ajay was saying, it has to be not technology for technology's sake or innovation for innovation's sake, but it has to be providing a solution to the customer. And I can give you a great example. At Parker, we're going through an integration. We acquired a company, Meggitt PLC, about 18 months ago. And when we look at our portfolios, there's very little overlap between the two companies and what we offered and what they brought to the table. But what we're finding out is that there's things that we were good at that they weren't, and technologies that they had that we didn't, that we're now finding new combinations that didn't exist before that allow us to provide better solutions to the customer than we could individually. So I think there's a lot of that type of value that can be brought to the table that is not a step, like a revolutionary step up in technology, but an evolutionary step that solves the problems that the customer base has. And I'm probably good that they put Pam in between David and I, because we could probably get in an arm wrestling match here at some point. But I'll bring up...
I don't have sharp elbows, don't worry.
I'll bring up 787 as an example of maybe there was too much innovation, right? Even to the point where Alan Mulally, the ex-CEO, said, we will never do a moonshot again, which he was referring to the 787. There was too much new technology that was put into one platform at one time. Boeing has gotten over that, and it's a great plane. But there was a lot of birthing pains that went along with that we have all gone through. So I think there's a good balance between innovation and how much of that you use, and having practical solutions. Right? It really all has to be associated with what's the risk aversion of your customer. Right? If it's in a very conservative, risk-averse environment, maybe heading to those really far-out technologies isn't the way that they want to go, and somebody with a lesser technology that's proven is the better solution for them. So I think you've got to look at it from a holistic picture of how do all the pieces put together from the frame of mind of where your customer's coming from.
Thanks, Barry. Pam?
So I agree with you. I actually was thinking about, like, there are certain customers who come to you or directly, like, they know you don't have what they want and they want something new and different. So they can be very specific and say, like, can you make this for me? And at that point, you know that what is the differentiator is an innovation. Like, can you change what you've got or create something new that they want? But that's not often the bulk of customers. For me, I find that's like a special set of customers, and I kind of know when they show up or give a ring up that that's what the gig is going to be. Like, so I agree that in those cases that immediate innovation is very important to give them confidence. Yes, I understand your problem, and I have this way of solving it that's new, but I have confidence that my people can execute this for you. But I think there's a whole other larger set of customers where the innovation is not something that's happening at that moment, but that you can say that over time, your whole company innovated to create the solution that exists today that's very mature. And to get there, you had to do a lot of innovation, but it's not like a today thing. It's something that you've done over the years and now can present to them as like, this is finished and workable and very low risk. And you can take it on right now. So I think, yes, there was innovation to getting to the point where you had the offering, but it's not, it's sort of in the past and is part of built into what your solution is that you're giving to them. Yeah.
Thank you, Pam. David?
I'll put the context around this. So the 787 was a battle between Airbus and Boeing, and Airbus was pushing the idea of A380 and the idea of hub and spoke architecture for air travel. And Boeing was advocating more city pairs, point to point, and trying to push the range of the aircraft even further to line up more city pairs. And so a lot of the innovations were in this aircraft itself were fundamental to enabling that aircraft to go those longer distances. So for example, the wing technology, I've never seen thinner wings than the composite wings that we put on the 787. And today we're putting it on or Boeing is putting it, I forget that I'm no longer there. But it's in my family's blood. My father, by the way, was a director of American Airlines. And so I appreciate the American Airline DC-3 back there.
Yeah, the American livery back there, right?
With the American livery, that's right. But the ideas and the innovations that they drew, it was really trying to differentiate against this large. If you ever take Whelan on an A380, it's enormous, and there's a lot of room to do a lot of different things, right? And I remember my dad, he was also vice president of Continental Airlines, and he invented the pub. That they put on Continental. I don't know if you remember back in the 80s, there was a Continental had a pub where you basically stand and drink. And so making innovations that serve maybe both your immediate customer and your eventual customer, I think, are really important.
All right. So discuss the growing importance of sustainability and ethical business practices that enhance competitiveness while addressing expectations for socially conscious consumers. Whew. That was a mouthful. Barry, you want to kick that one off?
Thanks, Josh.
I was going to give it to Ajay.
This was the one question I was hoping you weren't going to ask. So I actually, in preparation for this, I couldn't come up with a good answer, so I went over to our HR department and picked their brain a little.
Wow.
So I have to admit, I'm coming clean. I cheated on this one. So, the answer that they came up with was, it's establishing your purpose and your core values and extending those into that you just don't provide a product or a service, but that is who you are. Right? And those social responsibility elements, if you can build them into your proposal, or your business plan, or whatever that you're pursuing there, show more about you than your technical solution or your business plan or your cost proposal or anything. It shows who you are. And these days, I think there is a lot more awareness about who are you in the world, right? Parker's has a mantra that's, I'm going to get it wrong, I'm going to not get the exact words, but it generally says that we provide engineering solutions to provide a better tomorrow, right? And it doesn't say we provide technical solutions while we're rape and pillaging the earth. Right? Completely different messages out there, but we build that right into is whatever we do it with the intent that we're going to make tomorrow better than it was today. And I think there's a resonance of those kinds of messages that the customer can relate to. whether it be Boeing or Airbus, or if we're selling into the consumer market. Whatever it is that they know that behind it, there's more to it than just making a profit. And this goes all the way back to our founder, Arthur Parker, who started the company in 1918. One of his sayings, or one of his guiding principles, was fair dealing, right? Fair dealing with the public, right? We're not going to screw anyone over. We want to provide a good quality product at a fair price that we know that we're going to stand behind it. And so I think that whole element of fair dealings has been built into the Parker culture over 105 years now. So I think that part of it is really important.
All right, Pam?
So Iridium has lots of opportunities to do this, because when you're a commercial SATCOM company, people come all the time with their sad stories of why they need free commercial SATCOM. I mean, all the time, right? And our CEO loves to do social projects, and he's just a very social person. We have a lot of parties, and he's always asking people, like, why didn't you come to the party? But he also loves, which I love about him, it's like, but he also likes these social projects. And so like the one they're all on our website, but the one that's been used most lately is this tracking of giraffes in Africa. So they needed to track giraffes because, they're being but giraffes needed a special receiver because the neck, you can't tag them like rhinos and elephants. Like, there's a lot of technology that works for those, but they needed something special because giraffes have these really long necks, and you can't put it on their ears because they fall off. So anyway, we got involved in this, and we built this special receiver for National Geo, and now all these giraffes are tracked. And then so sent somebody out there with a camera to Africa. Not me, of course, I didn't get to go, but somebody got to go, and they got on to go on the safari, and all the giraffes were filmed. And so this is one of the, the like social responsibility things. And then the last one, which we've been doing now, is this thing called Rebel Rally, which is like a competition strictly for women to do like this off-road race in very rugged conditions, either in the Baja or West End. So it's just for women, kind of like a leadership sort of. And so we sponsored that. And then not only all of the SATCOM, but then two women from Iridium were trained to run one of the cars, so they participated in it. So, yeah, we do all that kind of stuff. And I think that the payback, if we were talking in those terms, is it's very important when you're hiring the next generation, the younger generation. They ask those questions in the interview, like, what are you doing? What are you doing to help, mitigate problems, and how do you contribute? And so if you're looking for a payback, that's really what it is. Like, because we've had to hire a lot of people for these programs we've won, and they're younger people, and they don't understand the traditions of Iridium, and we want to bring them in. And that's the first question. One of the first questions I ask is like, what's your social responsibility posture? Yeah.
It's a growing topic for sure. David?
So I'll just say it in 3 words. GE had one of the best mottos I've ever seen, and it's Harvard actually teaches a class around the value of communicating their value to community, bringing good things to life. So I think it says it all. So, and I think communicating that is what really helps there. So.
Now let's wrap up this evening's event. Thank you for attending.
We heard some different perspectives this evening on what drives competitiveness, ranging from innovation to customer trust to delivering on promises made.
We found all of the different perspectives interesting and important for us to understand. As we heard tonight, there are a lot of factors that contribute to competitiveness. Of course, hiring SMA can always help improve your competitiveness, whether it's with the pursuit of new business or the execution of business already won.
And I love the remark by Pam that her customer made about a proposal they submitted. It was like eating chocolate cake.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't get to get any better than that, right?
You're right.
And of course, Iridium hired SMA to run that proposal.
And that was a totally unsolicited remark.
It was entirely.
Now, we also introduced our SMA Competitive Index for federal contractors. This is a new benchmark that will help you better understand your relative capability for winning that next piece of business.
And we will publish a new issue of the Bulletin every quarter, updating the indexes based upon announced contract wins. So please contact us at info@smawins.com to receive your copy.
Now, we also want to thank our panelists for their participation this evening. Barry Draskovich, Group Vice President of Program and Contract Management at Parker Aerospace. He's the program executive for the Boeing 787 and the Gulfstream G500-600 programs.
And a good friend.
Yep.
And Pam Arya, Vice President of Government Programs at Iridium. And prior to this role, she was the co-founder and Chief Executive Officer of Tensity.
And David Whelan, member of the Defense Air Force Science Advisory Board and the prestigious National Academy of Engineers, and the former Vice President, Chief Technologist at Boeing Defense, Space, and Security.
Well, I know we had a great time at the event tonight.
We did.
And the Lyon Air Museum is an incredible venue. I would like to say thank you for everybody who was able to join us.
It really was a fun evening of meeting new people and reconnecting with friends. If you would like more information about SMA or about the competitive index, just contact us at info@smawins.com.
So thank you for joining us tonight.
Yep.
It was great to see everybody, and we certainly look forward to seeing you at our next event.
Yes. Good night, everyone.
Night.